Welcome back to the world's only pro-coronavirus podcast. This is the last...
Oh, now we're going modern with our bits.
Well, we're pro-coronavirus only if the people in the H-Bomber Guy Discord get it.
Only if the entire H-Bomber Guy Discord gets some form of cleansed with the coronavirus.
Cleansed via coronavirus. I didn't know we would be going this hard on them still.
I
thought they learned their lesson.
You're the one who wanted it. And
they learned that lesson when they banned me. And
yeah, they learned.
You wished on a monkey's paw, all right?
That's right. Yeah. Today's the last episode of the Whoresome Foursome because the OG, the king, creator of good thumbnails, Mari is leaving to leave us with bad thumbnails for the rest of the
thumbnails aren't that
podcast
bad. He
lifespan.
just decided not to use the font that I left and just use like a different.
I had to know what the font was, but Photoshop wouldn't open up.
I'm pretty sure.
This is the level of incompetence that we are replacing Mari with.
Is that also why you didn't have the?
It's bad communication on both sides.
Yes.
No, I sent him everything. I think Ryan just has like a bad copy of Photoshop.
You sent me everything, but Photoshop, my pirated version of Photoshop, stopped working, so I gotta repirate it.
Piracy is still good though. Reminder.
You're not sending it through the abstract thought construct, so it's an inferior form of communication.
So can you send me your .exe for that? Thanks, bud.
That's not just a .exe, you fool.
You need the data files. You need the data archives.
The data.
You have to run a bat extractor before you can even get in there.
By the way, I haven't talked to you.
Oh, I'm good. Yeah, and you
know
won't
what's up
again.
with you? You took like an hour to roll out of bed.
Oh yeah, no, I slept at like 5. My sleep schedule's been very, very bad because I'm ordering like Postmates and I'm getting like drinks all the time and I'm drinking the sodas like late. So like it slowly creeps later and later to when I sleep. And next thing you know, it's like, it's about to be 7 and I have to wake up. And then I woke up and then Jesse was like, where are you? I was like, oh no, I must be like super late. And I check, it's like, he sent me that like 30 minutes ago. And I'm like, oh my god.
Holy
30 minutes ago, I'm like,
to get that
1
fixed.
I know, yeah.
Wait, you still have to go to work?
What? Yeah, of course, it's online stuff. It's fine for me.
Well, he works.
Well, I figured you could do it remotely.
I could technically, yeah, I could. We've all known we could do that. It's just we need like the immediate response to like be like, hey, can I get an approval of this or this? But then Jesse's like, I'm only gonna come in on Mondays and Fridays, so just tell it to Kristen. I'm like, okay, hey Kristen, can I do this? And Kristen's like, all right, let me message Jesse. Okay.
Good.
That's
hilarious.
Well. So yeah, last episode of good old Mari, our Asian representation for the show.
That's because I'm going to murder him after this.
From now on, it's just gonna be 3 white guys like every other podcast.
Three
Unfortunately,
white guys saying slurs and complaining about.
Yeah,
because I don't think about
that we're white.
It's pretty fucking clear that we're white.
Yeah.
I don't have the same vocal cord structure.
Can't go 3 minutes without talking about mayonnaise or whatever you guys. My only experience with white people being white was Undercover Brother. I'm gonna be honest.
With shirt pockets.
For the longest time, it
was
was Undercover Brother.
What the fuck was that about mayonnaise?
There was a whole. It's a whole. I don't know. It's Eddie Griffin being like a black super spy. And he had a watch where he could squirt out, where he squirts out mayonnaise. No. He squirts out hot sauce because they would only put mayonnaise on their condiments. It was dumb. It was funny.
No, it sounds really cerebral. Actually, I think we should do it for the.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, that sounds like a good episode of the pod.
Okay.
You should have picked that instead of this one.
So, Mari, part of your reasoning for this was because Parasite won Best Picture. Yes.
Yes. Oh, I mean, and also Bong Joon-ho makes good movies. So
well, yeah.
Yeah.
But I did the math. I went and did the math. And the Academy has been right about the Best Picture of the Year 4 times out of 92. Out of the 92 awards ceremonies in its entire lifespan, there have only been 4 times that it was correct about which was the best movie of the year.
Which were they?
Well, Parasite is one, obviously.
Okay.
The first 2 Godfather movies, which are easy. And Casablanca
Beauty and the Beast
are the only 4 times that it was actually the best movie that came out that year.
The only facts I know about the Academy Awards and Best Picture is that Beauty and the Beast was the first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture. It didn't win that year, but it was nominated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they usually
the
have a
Academy
trend.
in general is just absolute garbage, except for when something really actually good comes out, and then they're like, "Well, I guess we kind of have to now."
What I know about the Oscars choices for Best Picture is that the Oscars don't matter unless it's a movie I like. So that's
I
where
agree.
I go.
Well, that's just with anything.
Oh,
That's just how opinions work.
This is a
So I was-
sham.
I was
Parasite.
very-
Oh, hell yeah.
I was very surprised that the Oscars mattered so much this year. It was really bizarre because usually they don't.
It was
they
all the more
still don't
impressive
matter
that,
to
that
me.
also won Best Foreign Picture, or whatever they call
Well,
it now, international
because
picture.
it
Something
wouldn't
like
make
that.
any sense if it didn't.
I
But
know,
yeah,
I know you
that
said. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean that category should still exist because the chances of foreign movies making it into the Best Picture nominees are still like trivial, despite this. But
Yeah, despite this one outlier.
it does make it redundant when there's a crossover. For what it's worth.
I'd imagine that wouldn't happen too often, though.
I was gonna
No.
say something. I forgot. Fuck. Oh well.
I don't know if I don't think it was the first time a foreign film was nominated for Best Picture. Actually, I don't know, but it's definitely.
Well, I
the
don't
first
know
winner.
either. Well, I don't know either. I just don't imagine that they intersect that often. It doesn't seem
Of course
like
not.
it would.
Question for
Especially
you all.
with the Academy.
What do you guys? How familiar are you guys with Korean cinema?
I've seen Old
Not
Boy
very.
like 3 times.
The first big Korean movie I watched was
Shrug.
Parasite, and then this.
Yeah,
I'm very inexperienced.
I've seen a few, and
I've seen it.
normally they were just Bong Joon-ho or Park Chan-wook.
Yeah,
I love
Pretty
those
much.
guys, and like some random Korean things with like K-pop stars in it because I was like obsessed at that time. But
You're
they're like
still-
really dark. They're like really dark, and I'm sure they're like a small sliver of what most of Korean cinema is, because of course it is. But like the really critically acclaimed stuff, a lot of murder, a lot of murderers, lots of detectives and like rapes and like even Okja has had some really dark shit in it.
Well,
yeah.
it's
I mean,
kind of
from my experience, I can agree with that.
it's kind of a, I don't know, anti-establishment kind of.
Exactly.
Well, not anti-establishment, but. Well, I'm not finished with my point yet. Don't agree with my point. I haven't finished it. It's just kind of, I guess it's more, it's using it for the shock value because it's something that, I mean, they even address in the film and even outside of the context of the film, like these kinds of serial murders were new, and filmmakers are kind of jumping at the bid to explore this topic, which is pretty interesting. It's also interesting because in '97, after the Asian financial crash, there were a lot of like funds that were allocated to kind of, I guess, help Korean filmmakers at the time, which is why you kind of see a resurgence or a renaissance of sorts of South Korean films at the end of the '90s and the early 2000s.
I don't know. I mean, it like because there's a lot of crime movies, and then the sort of Korean crime aesthetic is a lot more nihilistic and brutal and kind of messy in a down to earth way, whereas like the American crime aesthetic is like highly stylized and usually closer to black comedy. Thinking of like Scorsese and Tarantino in particular. But
And like the style of this movie and also the style of Parasite, I noticed were kind of very similar in that the genre was a little bit fluid, much more in Parasite than Memories of Murder. But it did it was always like a really serious story, but it sometimes the tone wasn't that serious. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
I mean,
it
it's-
got a bit
I
silly
think there's a
at
lot
some
of comedic
parts.
stuff that happens with especially with all the kicking from the center of.
Well, I mean, it's
Yeah.
I would think the more I wouldn't call the kicking scenes necessarily comedic, at least from my viewpoint. I mean, I think it's just more meant to be a mirror of real life, where it's just kind of a form of not necessarily gallows humor, but just you're kind of making humor and jokes, or at least the film is making these jokes, kind of in light of the bleakness.
which
I guess is very gallows humor, but still.
And I don't know if that's specific to Bong Joon-ho or if that's a general Korean film thing.
But that isn't. I mean, I don't know if that necessarily qualifies as comedy, because in a lot of ways, if you want to be realistic, you have to acknowledge that there are typically humorous situations that arise out of typically serious situations that sort of exist simultaneously. I mean, it could just be texture for drama, is what I'm saying, and not necessarily comedy.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not trying to say either that it's genre fluid, but
I don't really think it's genre fluid at all, to be honest. I think that kind of...
I think kind of is subtle.
It's a genre.
I don't know.
Where does it fit on the...
Well, I think it's
I
like...
think genre in general, everyone's bashed like the whole like idea of genre nowadays because like films like Parasite genre? Where it's like one thing. You can't... A lot of things nowadays you can't classify as just one certain genre.
By genre.
But you should consider the genre if it serves the film. Like, you should consider a movie that's trying to talk about horror movies a horror movie because that serves the film. And I think this film in particular is trying very much to be the sort of anti-police procedural. Like, just this sort of negative, ultimate subversion of the police procedural, I guess.
It's especially
I see what you mean.
It's especially poignant because part of the film was kind of meant to highlight the brutality of South Korean police at the time.
The brutality and just like, I mean, I maybe that's just my, bleeding heart liberal sensibility, but I tend to sort of synonymize beating up suspects with very little evidence and then creating evidence to use against them as just sort of, how do I put this, inefficient police work as well as being immoral, in addition to being immoral. So it's not even just a matter of like, how far will he go to get the truth? It's like, he just doesn't even really want to solve the case, so he's just kind of locking up the nearest retard and calling it a day.
It's not about finding the right answer. It's about finding the easiest answer or your answer.
Yeah.
It's like when people use anecdotes about communism being a failure of an economic system, and they're sort of talking about, well, everyone just wants to meet a quota. They don't actually want to, like, do something good. Or I kept thinking about that argument while I was watching it, because it certainly seems like they're trying to meet a quota, or like your boss in LA Noire. He's like, just arrest someone, you fucking idiot.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of things about how cops, just the way the system works is that they have to like meet a quota, which is probably the most bullshit thing to have your the people who are supposed to be protecting your city,
give them an incentive to manufacture more crimes. Yes, that is pretty stupid.
That's sort of part of the all cops are bad argument, is in that the system sort of forces them to be bad to do their job properly.
But these guys aren't necessarily forced to be bad. They're kind of going above and beyond.
These guys are just kind of,
there's a deliberate.
This is like,
at least initially, anyway.
This was only Bong Joon-ho's like second feature film, and like it's like he has such a command of like the blocking. I think he really shines with the blocking in this because there's not a lot of the coverage shots where we cut to different things. It's always just like a single frame or the camera's moving, and it's so good.
It's really impressive.
Yeah,
for being an early.
I also I really like a lot of the longer shots in this movie where it's just the camera's just sitting in a corner, and like the shot in where it's like all raining and the detectives like have the little girls come into the little shed or whatever. Like that's a pretty long shot. That's like a couple minutes, I think.
And I kept thinking about Human Centipede for some reason.
Never seen it. I know about it, never seen it.
Because the beginning of Human Centipede, there's two girls come to the house and it's like, oh my god, it's raining so hard and we like need you know any centipedes laying around for us to use? Start a car.
Speaking of the raining scene, speaking of a scene in the rain, the scene from the girl and she's humming the tune and she has the umbrella at the long road. and then
Yeah.
in the background you see the little shadow moving in the grass.
Yeah,
That was
where
so
it
good.
goes to like
It's
a
hard to
wider
see if you're
shot.
watching like a low quality copy, but like you can still kind of see the motion just because of how
Yeah,
the framing
it's
is.
out of focus.
And out of
It's-
focus,
yeah,
too,
the background is out of focus, and you can just see the figure sort of coming up and then slowly going back down into the fields. It's a really good shot. Yeah, the cinematography in this is really good. Like the one shot where the two detectives come back to the scene of the crime and they're hiding behind the bush. Like they have the two guys in the foreground,
and then
the
new
guy
cop comes
jerking
in the
off.
back. Yeah.
The guy jerking off in the middle ground, and then the background is the other cop. Yeah.
Oh, and then
Mhm.
and then following that scene, we have the chase scene, and they arrive
Oh,
at
yeah.
the quarry all sweaty, and then there's the It reminded me of Parasite because Bong Joon-ho said that he likes to control a lot of the movement in the scene. I mean, obviously, but we see the guy in the back. He's bending over just before we see his underwear. Two guys walking in the foreground. I was like, oh yeah, that's super on the purpose. Because in Parasite he also moved some truck. He had to time a truck moving in the back. But anyway, how do you guys feel about the ending?
The ending.
I think it's perfect
mean-
for what it's trying to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
And
good.
wasn't this slightly based on something real that wasn't solved?
It wasn't slightly based. It was meticulously based on it.
Mhm.
It was very
Yeah,
accurate. Like, well, I mean, there were some details added, like the fact that the victims always wore red, and it was always during the rain. Those were added in for the
Yeah,
film.
that's,
But
that feels like
the
a
way
very
that
like
they were-
crime movie thing.
the way that they were bound, the way that they had their panties on their head, even the peaches, that was real. All those
wow.
details were in the film. In fact, the release of the film actually sparked interest in the case again, because
Interesting.
it had kind of dropped off for a little bit, and then they picked the case back up. And it wasn't until last year that they got a confession from Lee Chun-jae,
Oh,
Incredible.
who actually confessed to all
That's-
the murders.
fucking crazy! Wow.
It doesn't
not know that.
necessarily mean he actually did it, but let's hope that he's the one who did
The
it.
cops
for-
never
It's
changed.
cool to
Well, they
think he
got-
did.
They're
they-
still doing their detective work.
Well,
the same
it
way.
wasn't just a confession. They also had mounds of DNA evidence as
Right,
well,
yeah.
and physical evidence.
Sure.
Oh,
what's
also,
your... yeah.
sorry. It's probably my favorite moment in the movie is when, I think it was Cho. He gets the papers from America that say whose DNA it was in the sperm, and it just slowly like looks at the paragraph saying like it cannot be determined that it's Park Seong Ho or whoever it was.
Technically the
And
worst result, because it doesn't disconfirm it either. It is the worst possible
Yeah.
thing to get in the mail, is that it's like, I
And it's
don't
just
know, dude.
and it's I love it because it's just him. Everyone's like freaking out and yelling, and then he just shuts up, and then he starts reading it, and then it cuts to like the actual paper, and the subtitle sort of slowly fades in, and then he just kind of walks away angrily. It's a really good moment.
Typically, a police procedural is like very cold and detached, because the appeal is the sort of Rubik's Cube unraveling of the crime and the motive of the crime and the et cetera, et cetera. Which part of the reason I think this is so deliberately trying to be the opposite of that is that it, through the entire time, is trying to be simultaneously very human. I mean, Bong is a very humanistic filmmaker, and that's true in all of the works that I've seen of his. But also having every bit of important information or clue also just be kind of tremendously unsatisfying. Just sort of like an arbitrary addition to the pile of factoids. Doesn't really... Like, it's not solving a puzzle. It's just like, why the fuck haven't we caught this asshole yet? It's just sort of like a fury about being unable to catch the guy. It's not any sort of
I'm
facet.
telling you, man.
There's none of that that cliche sort of mutual respect between detective and serial killer, like cat and mouse kind of thing. That's just completely absent. There's none of that at all.
I'm telling you,
Yeah.
man, he's hairless.
Yeah.
That's why we haven't found any hair.
I think that detachment presents itself early on, just with the fact that we don't know the first girls who were killed. We don't know how, like, he just comes across it the same way we stay with the detective, which I really enjoyed. But like there's that sense of detachment for sure, of just like do we really? I think this goes with my theory for my interpretation at the end, where it's like we don't actually care who the killer was or anything. We just care that these detectives are running around entertaining us, and the detective stares at us being like, you guys are the murderers because you just want this chase to never end, kind of.
We are the coronavirus.
I mean,
We're the
we
real
are the
virus.
That's an interesting. I guess I would give that more credence if it wasn't a fact, like a real story.
Yeah,
like if they had written
yeah.
a story, then I would be able to understand that mentality.
Yeah.
I don't know if the postmodern. Why'd you watch the movie, you fucking asshole? Why would you do that?
This isn't End of Evangelion.
Like, hey, yo,
Yeah.
killer! I know you're watching my movie. That guy.
Well, I saw someone. I think I've seen more than one person compare this to David Fincher's Zodiac. And
yeah.
they're both great movies, and they are both based on real, at least for a time, unsolved serial killer cases. But I don't really think they have all that much in common ultimately. I mean, first off, Fincher isn't a very humanistic director to sort of parallel, and Zodiac plays pretty heavily into the cold, logical Rubik's Cube serial killing procedural for at least the first half or so, until it gets to the point where it's like, oh, we're really not going to solve this thing, and then they get upset about it. But I think I don't know if they actually have that much in common outside of the surface.
Mm-hmm. What else?
I mean, there was a point where I was like, oh, we're this far in and they already found the killer, and that happened like 3 times.
Well,
It's like, oh, finally, an hour in, we got it.
because you can tell it's going to be atypical from the opening.
Yeah.
You get the feeling that this isn't going to be like just a mystery. There's going to be some other component to this. So it's like I wondered if like the retarded guy in like the first 20 minutes is it going to be that this is the guy and then something else happens and that's the point of the movie, or like I actually didn't know what was coming, because I knew that it wasn't necessarily trying to trick me into not knowing what's coming. It's like paradoxical. The fact that it isn't a M. Night Shyamalan movie where I know there's a plot twist at the end means that I'm less prepared for a plot twist if it happens to exist.
Right.
Well, right. It doesn't feel like it is as tropey, I
Right.
suppose.
Yeah.
You can tell that there's not necessarily any like narrative, like direct narrative obfuscation or sleight of hand in that respect, because like you said, they're not, because there is just that detachment. We still, there's no, even when we think we've solved it, and at several points through, it's like, oh, did they solve it? Did they solve it? Did they solve it? No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I don't know about you guys, but I was thinking about this recently, about films based on real events where the film sort of stops at a point where in real life is where it stopped, where it's like, yeah, we don't know what the fuck's going on with this guy. And I feel like that's unsatisfying in a way, but you can't be mad at it, because it's like, well, that's just how it is. What are you gonna make something up for this? Like, I sort of had a similar problem with the ending of The Social Network, which it's not really a problem. It's just like, that's just a part of how it's gonna have to be made, because it's like.
But that's not. Just...
I don't know, because it's like, as a film, it doesn't end quite satisfactory the way that a actual like written story would,
Well, I disagree, because I think the fact that it has an unsatisfactory ending is what made it a story worth telling in the first place. Like the fact that it's a subversion of and then we'll solve the Rubik's Cube and figure it out and put the guy in the prison, etc. It's like, no, it's not. The fact that you're thinking about it from the perspective of a solution means that you're in fiction because there isn't necessarily a solution. So tough.
Yeah.
You're gonna spend decades being haunted by it.
The fact that it's fiction would, according to tropes, necessitate that solution. When in reality, solutions aren't always there.
If you're writing something and it ends, if it's like a completely fictional story and it ends like, we don't know what happens next, then it's like, well, either you're doing a cliffhanger or you're just don't want to write a specific ending for it.
I mean, I think it depends. I think a lot of times that can be hack writing, but I think a lot of other times it can be better than actually concluding the story.
I think it just depends on whether or not you're building to a larger mystery or whether you're leaving things like just like unintentionally unsolved, when it's almost like this Alex Kurtzman-esque, I'm going to draw up all these plot threads and then immediately drop them, and they're not relevant in any way at all.
Yeah.
I don't know who Alex Kurtzman is, but I thought of Lost when you said that.
Star Trek Picard.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah.
I have a cough.
Yeah.
Don't we all?
Your other scheduled podcast came through a little
Picard
early.
virus.
Yeah, I beamed in from my other show where we talk about Star Trek.
Right.
And how Data's fully functional.
God, are we gonna have to do a Celluloid Goblins Star Trek sideshow?
No,
We're
shut
not
the
gonna.
fuck up.
I will never recommend the TNG movies. You can be assured of that.
Oof.
Those rough.
Are any of the Star Trek movies good?
Yeah, don't they say like the even and the odd ones or something like that?
Well,
Because
that's
it
what
feels
the
like it
original.
would be a best fit for a TV show. I'm not sure how like a full.
That's the
hour
original
and a
series,
half
not
long.
the TNG movies. I've seen parts of Wrath of Khan, which people consider to be the best of the Star Trek films, but I haven't seen it myself, so I can't really make that judgment.
Ryan, you don't actually.
And
the three of us don't know anything about Star
thing-
Trek, so the fact they're
I
asking you
watched
questions
one
about
episode
it.
the other night.
And the thing that's kind of, I mean, I almost know the plot of it, even though I haven't seen the film, just because of my awareness of Star Trek as a whole. But in the ending of 2, Spock canonically dies, but then the whole point of 3 is, we gotta get him back! Mm-hmm. It's like...
That's always
then,
great.
Well, that's
And then 4 is, now that we got him, we gotta go back home, and it's like... Yeah, let's just completely undervalue a character's sacrifice.
That's like what Rise of Skywalker did, but in one movie.
No, fucking franchises can't let characters die. They don't know
Rise
how
of
to...
Skywalker would be a fucking like go up like 2 points if Chewbacca actually died.
People still think Infinity War is great, even though it was fucking contingent from the beginning of like the entire concept of that movie. That most of these guys will be coming back in the second. It's like, what?
Endgame makes Infinity War completely pointless.
But they were always a pair. It was never going to be. It wasn't like they made a brilliant piece of art and then they tacked it on afterwards. It was like, even from the beginning, it was a cynical twofer, and people have still bought into it, and they're still buying into it after both of them have come out. I don't know how that works.
It was a real Death of Superman.
Death of Superman as a standalone is great. Yeah.
As a standalone,
Right.
And then he came back with a mullet.
What are you saying? There's
I've
other
only
Superman
heard...
comics aside from Death of... You're telling me there's any other Superman comics that exist in the entire universe other than the trade of Death of Superman? Because I don't believe you.
Yeah. The only way to make Superman good is to have him not be Superman, which is dead.
I don't want to talk about Superman. Can we get back to the good movie?
Me neither. Fucking, why did we bring it up? Get back
was
to
a one-off
Memories of
gag,
Murder
and then
by
you
Michael
all
J.
extended
Hall
it
from
out.
2003.
Superman Returns came out in 2003, didn't it?
I saw that in the theater. I think it was later than 2000. I think it was like 06.
I watched it once as a kid. My parents had a DVD.
I think my
of
favorite
it.
part of that movie was probably when Superman got hit in the knee with a nail board, and they had to amputate his leg because he was going to get tetanus.
Yeah, that was also my favorite part of
Did
Superman.
we just run out
Returns.
of things to talk about the movie? We're like,
I was going to loop it back to the movie.
I loved it when Superman dropkicked that retarded kid.
Yeah. That's
Did he only do that one time?
Because he was a necrophiliac.
Did he really only do that one time?
I
mean, he drops kicks like 2 other guys. I don't know.
Yeah, there was a couple drop kicks.
I don't remember any other scenes.
There was a scene. There was like 2 times in the cell where he drop kicked them, and then
why
the
are you
one in the bar
fixated on only
fight.
the drop kick? He does
Because
several other horrible things.
Yeah, but it seems like he's sort of like me playing Devil May Cry, where it's like, in lieu of practicality, I really want to do this particular combo that looks cool, and I'm gonna like sacrifice anything I need to make sure that it happens, or like doing
Which is
a
honestly
fatality.
kind of the point of Devil May Cry.
I guess, but the thing about the dropkick is that, from what I understand of like martial arts, is that you're transferring the motion of your jump to your kick, which makes it significantly more powerful than just a standing kick.
It just happens to also look really fucking rad. It's the intersection of practicality and style.
We need to find the alternate cut, which has the flashing QT at the bottom, which has suplex as the text.
Yeah, I agree.
But the drop kick kind of brings me back to my point of like I feel like Bong Joon-ho's films, the ones I've seen so far at least, are kind of genre fluid because
now it's a martial arts.
Are you gonna tell me that's a fucking action scene where he drop kicks a guy and then it cuts to the? Are you really gonna tell me that?
No, because no, because a drop kick is like, it's kind of fucking cartoony. Like, it's kind of silly.
But
it's
so
like a
just
slapstick
explained that
comedy.
it has practical application. So that, I mean, unless you were gonna refute
I
it
know.
has practical application.
But also, it just looks fucking silly.
But first off, it's a cop, so you know he's loving getting to beat the shit out of innocent people because that's why he signed up for the fucking job.
Yeah,
so,
knowing the martial arts is like, that's a bonus.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you?
Practicing martial arts is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well,
you don't need to be a smart fighter to be a cop. You can just beat them up like high school or style.
I'm more of a
just,
fan of
hitting them over the head.
like the soft martial arts, which are traditionally the more defensive, use the opponent's weight against them, like judo.
In slap fights.
Yeah, slap fights.
One of the soft martial arts.
You know, that's exactly what I was thinking. And when I was walking down the halls of my middle school, watching two girls slap each other out, like, this reminds me of Jackie Chan.
Oh man, you got to see fights in middle school? I wish I got to see fights.
There were like two.
Damn.
I saw a guy get busted for weed in middle school. The fucking cop came.
Fucking awesome, super relevant story, Ryan. Okay, so like I did like this movie, and I have a lot of positive things to say about it, but I think it's too long.
Yeah. I can see that.
I think a decent chunk of it could have been shaven off, and I would have preferred that to be the case. I mean, part of it is that it takes a really long time for me to get invested because what is usually engaging to me about a detective story is the things that this film is trying so hard to not do, or to do the opposite of, is like the puzzle and the riddle of it, the mystery, more directly rather than just sort of oh fuck, I gotta do this now. I gotta do this. What? Fucking serial killing is my job, is to catch this. God damn it! I'm just trying to like chill out and fuck my girlfriend, I guess.
I don't know. I didn't feel that necessarily when I was watching it. I guess it was mostly just because I wasn't trying to get into what you would describe as the puzzle aspect, or trying to find that. I was more observing the characters and trying to understand how they worked and what their personalities were.
Yeah.
And seeing them in those out of work scenarios certainly was a boon to me.
No, I mean it's good. I guess what I mean is it's that plus the fact that the character that we spend most of the movie on, especially the first half of, is like, you know, I mean, we're talking about for the most part, these are shitty, bad, violent cops that just kick the shit out of people, create fake evidence to get a pressured, intimidated confession out of a guy who's already retarded to begin with.
Tortured confession too.
Yeah, so you could never actually like really trust a confession he made, regardless. And it's like, honestly, I'm kind of rooting for the serial killer, if I'm going to be real with you. We're talking about like this police outfit, this like group exercising excessive authority and terrorizing the population versus a serial killer.
Well, that
I'm going to pick the non-authority figure reliably.
Right, and what I think is interesting about that is, once they introduce Detective CO, the detective from the city, who comes in to help on the case. Initially, it's like he's the more humanizing. He's the character you're meant to more easily sympathize with.
Right.
And then throughout the film, there's kind of an inversion of character portrayal, because as the investigation goes on, Detective CO is willing to do anything, and even like, I'm not sure if it's unlawful, but just surveying of the suspect and going to such lengths as ignoring physical DNA evidence, saying, hey, this semen sample didn't match this one, therefore it's not him.
It's a mistake. I don't need it.
But no, it has to be this guy. It's got to be him.
Yeah.
Because he had soft hands.
That's really good, because it's like a procedural. The main character would be the city detective that goes to the rural area to do the mystery, and he has to tangle with the local police. Well, that's not how we do things down here, mister, in order to get the thing done. But in this film, we are the perspective of the local police that is in over their heads. And then we get the city guy to come down, and he's expecting to solve the riddle. And as it gets towards the end of the film, and you realize, oh, this isn't actually a Rubik's Cube at all. This is like just a fucking mess of bloody corpses tangled into a roughly Rubik's shaped pattern.
It's almost...
Then he begins to kind of like become desperate for it, because his sense of calmness and coolness and rationality was based on the narrative of being able to solve the case. When he realizes that's not so easily acquired, he becomes just a violent psychopath like the rest of them.
It's almost Darkseid 2-esque, if Darkseid 2 was actually good.
Everyone has played Darkseid 2 and knows what you're talking about. Everyone on this podcast has played Darkseid 2, 100%ed it all the way through.
Everyone watched that episode of Peanut Butter Gamer in like 2011, talking about Darkseid.
Yeah, well, I was going to explain the connection, and then you said that everyone already knows what it is, so I'm not going to now.
You're right.
So,
it would be a waste of time to discuss it, I think. Be like discussing plot points of The Godfather or something. It's not like anyone on this podcast hasn't seen The Godfather, right? That would be ridiculous for a guy to have a movie podcast and not have seen The Godfather. That'd be just fucking.
I love when he shoots
silly
bullshit. I'm the Godfather now.
I can see a beacon of light coming off from the west. I'm not really sure what that is.
I can see. I love the part in The Godfather where he goes, projection. I guess, where the ending where he goes, I guess in the end we were the Godfather all along.
And then I like the part in the second one where it's like, I guess the real Godfather Part 2 was the friends we made along the way.
When we started this episode, I had a pretty not okay headache, and this is not helping.
Well, that's us. You being in pain because of our bad jokes is a central, foundational pillar of the greatness of Celluloid Goblins.
I'm not in pain because of the jokes. I'm probably in pain because of, I don't know, I breathed in some
coronavirus
that passed in from somewhere. Well, it's
you
not
ate
corona
some
because
asbestos?
the pain would be in my lungs and they would be full of fluid.
Ugh.
LCL virus.
Ah, yes. Slowly I will turn to...
And then he's just gone, and it's just me and Dunk for the rest of the podcast.
Well, I'm also here. I mean, I'm not here. I'm gone.
Good.
Where's a ghost?
Jesus. That was nice. Man,
we're doing good on our bits today.
I'm struggling to fill an hour, to be honest with you.
I gotta...
Because the movie, even though it has sort of like a interpretive, mysterious end, it's also just like, it's a pretty straightforward movie.
Yeah. Especially because it's also...
Well, that's part of the reason I felt like it was a little long. I kind of wish it was, if it was going to be so straightforward, that it was more to the point.
We could do that thing we discussed earlier, which
look up bad reviews.
Letterboxd reviews.
Look up bad reviews.
So here's one.
We could do that.
Here's
thing.
one from.
Here's one.
Here's one from Jack. on Letterboxd gave it a 1.5 stars. Who says, "Bong Joon-ho, make one single movie that I like challenge."
What did he give Parasite?
What does that even?
Check his
What does that
profile.
even mean? What are you saying with that?
American.
It doesn't look like he rated it.
He just
okay, let's
didn't.
read
He
an
gave
actual
up
one.
right before that one. He saw Okja and he was like, you know what? I'm never gonna see one of this guy's fucking movies again. I'm giving up. That's the last one.
I like eating my meat.
Okay, this one is a bit long, but it seems interesting. 1.5 stars from Ramaladni. Awful movie, lauded by people who don't know any better. This movie's infuriating because of how dim-witted and unfit for their job the police are. Even if it's meant to criticize their actions, it doesn't mean it's enjoyable to watch.
Shut the fuck. We gotta break this down sentence by sentence. Okay, so you're telling me that all police are competent, moral beings capable of executing fair justice across their humble populace.
Every single policeman.
All right, I mean, if that's the argument.
So, because someone on the show was much more later than I had expected, I have a Pathfinder session that's happening right now.
Hell
that I need to
yes.
attend.
Oh,
Hell yes.
And I'm
Get him.
currently
Call him out.
that I'm 4 minutes late to.
Okay, yeah, you
So-
go. We'll mop
Yeah,
it up.
I'm
you know
going
what?
to stop.
What'd you rate it
Uh,
out of 10?
probably 7 out of 10.
Okay.
That's what I gave it. Yeah.
Thank you, Soy.
Yeah.
So we will be
Audio.
back next week for whatever Ryan's dumbass picks.
Oh yeah, I
That's the
get to
movie.
pick. Oh, I'm excited.
I'm sure it'll be a piece of shit. Should we
Yeah.
I don't really have anything else to say.
should we do
Yeah, it's a good
a
movie.
coronavirus special and talk about something
This
else
is gonna be the rest of the podcast.
and
It's not
extend
gonna
the
be-
pod?
I mean, in the Palo Alto episode, we just talked about non-binariness and gender for like half the episode.
What about
So we can just do whatever the fuck we
what
want.
about the
really.
genre binary for movies?
Murder detective genre?
Hey, it's me, Detective Moida.
I
Just drop it. There's nothing else.
Nah, there's. I was gonna say something. I like how the title of the movie is Memories of Murder, and it's like they don't have a lot of hard evidence. They're just working off of people's memories of the murder.
Jesus Christ. That is some of the worst bottom of the barrel fucking critical analysis I've heard. Not just on this podcast, but probably ever in my entire life. That is some
That was a
real
bit.
garbage.
That's a fucking bit. You really think it was gonna like?
It would not be, to be honest, I know I just said it was a new record, but stupidity of transcendental levels would not be an unprecedented activity for me. So I can't.
Aren't
I
you
don't
so
know.
glad you have someone fucking retarded on your
Yes.
movie podcast?
It makes me look like a genius, even though I'm also
Because I can
retarded.
represent the audience who didn't get it.
The whole audience is fooled into thinking I'm not retarded, which is great because usually it's really obvious that I'm retarded, and I have to.
You have to disguise it with your thesaurus.
Uh huh.
That just seems smart with your wordies.
Yeah,
This is the worst.
I think it's pretty good. I think it's one of the best.
I think this is a good way to end your run. Just a movie you picked that we had not much to say about.
This podcast is just gonna get worse. I've set it up, and we're on the come down trajectory where it's just sort of less and less effort as the lifespan goes on. Less and less effort, but probably not more and more success. Unfortunately, is the part where we're not gonna.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's probably gonna be my dad, and until he dies from coronavirus,
So like
and then nobody.
a couple of days.
I hope he doesn't have it.
Yeah,
yeah.
Sincere.
Yeah,
I hope,
he'd
I hope
probably
I-
fucking die.
You should quarantine yourself
you-
so you don't risk infecting them.
I already have. I've been at home playing Kingdom Hearts
Oh, did
for the
they
past
you
like
don't live with
3 days. No,
Okay, well I think we should just stop.
I've just been throwing
Yeah?
down these.
Oh, okay.
Just end
All right.
it.
Yeah.
Candles.
Remember, we should have done this with Palo Alto.
The
Just stopped
fucking-
it when we
the
could. But
fucking
Palo Alto would have been like
episodes,
20
if we
minutes.
do this, the episodes are gonna be 5 minutes. By like 2 months from now, it's just gonna get worse and worse and worse.
Good.
No, I think just okay. Because the next one I choose, we're gonna have a lot to talk about.
Well, say what it is, man.
Okay, I'm choosing my favorite movie ever, The Lighthouse.
I literally made a joke about you watching The Lighthouse again. Before.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, no, it's my favorite movie, and I love it for so many different reasons. And I chose it because I knew we could talk about it for a while.
Because you're trying to
there's a lot in that movie.
Save the dying film podcast from certain obliteration.
Instead of choosing a purposely shitty one, I'll do a one I like. I'll alternate between Into the Wilds and Lighthouse.
You like Into the Wild? You're trying to fucking gaslight me into believing that you dislike Into the Wild when like you retroactively fabricated.
No. I don't dislike it. It's that I knew you would dislike it, and that I knew you guys wouldn't like it, and that's why I chose it. Was because I knew it would create discourse between us, and we would have an interesting conversation about it. Our differences.
Was it interesting?
Can I go?
Yeah, get the fuck out. You're off the podcast.
All right, goodbye forever, Mario.
No,
we'll never see you again.
Me and Ryan are going to do a coronavirus special where we bitch at each other gripe at each other about some bullshit.
Yeah.
I think we should do. I think that would be a good plan. Because everybody's stuck inside, and who are they going to spend time with? Aside from us. There are no popular podcasts.
Yeah, we are the comforters on your bed.
So...
smoke up, get your popcorn, get your water, get your IV drip, kids, because we're gonna talk about Corona.
What are we gonna talk about?
Do you want to? What is there to talk about? I have 9 confirmed cases in my town with a population of 36,000.
I hope you get it and you die, you fucking piece of shit. Love you, Ryan. I love you.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I mean,
we're
both in really. The thing is,
which of those do you think is the truth? Which of those?
We're both in the biggest states, but yet Alaska has way smaller towns.
Yeah.
With smaller populations, so that's why I'm kind of fucked.
Chilling.
You're all right, I think.
How does having less population density mean you're more at risk? That doesn't make any sense.
Because there's less people.
Yes, there's less people, which means there's less spread. There's more space between people.
Yeah, but that means it's more likely that I'm going to meet someone with it.
Yes, but you're less likely to be stuck in an elevator with them and having them breathe all over you.
Yeah, I suppose.
Because there's fucking 20 miles of lumber between you and every person. It's not really something you gotta worry about.
I mean... I think, I don't know. What do you fucking care that you get it?
I don't. You're right.
Go over to Joe Biden's home and just run in there and just fucking.
If I knew where Joe Biden lived, I would assassinate him. First off.
All right.
I am going to kill Joseph Biden, former Vice President of the United States. I'm going to put him out of his misery because he's clearly doesn't have much time left. His dementia is at a very advanced stage, and I feel sorry for him.
It's at stage 6 of everywhere at the end of time.
So when I stab him 37 times in the chest with a scalpel, it's not because I want to hurt him. It's because I want to help him. It's just a notification to all law enforcement beforehand, before I commit that crime. Life of Pi is a garbage story. The book and the movie is a fucking... the whole
are we just going to go over every possible movie right now?
Yes, the whole point is, which one do you want to believe? The one that happened, or... It's like, bitch, the one that happened. I don't care if, like... The whole point is the choice, like, you want to believe the happy one or the sad one? And it's like, well, which one happened? You fuck. I'm a journalist. That's my job! You fucking stupid shit kid on a boat with your dumb tiger. That's my job!
Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Goodbye, everyone. Next movie, The Lighthouse.
You're really gonna call it off? I'm on fire. This is gold. I'm on a roll.
This is the best episode we've had in years.
It's the best episode we've ever had.
Oh, I haven't stopped recording.
Now you fucking...
Going recording also.
You,
Okay.
Now I gotta get the momentum back. Fucking Blinks the Time Cat.
Jesus.
Syrian
Fucking
refugees. I lost it. I lost the train. Somehow those things are connected, but it's gone now.
Blinks the Time Cat and Life of Pi.
And the Syrian refugees.
You could workshop that. You could put that together.
I feel like you know that episode of fucking South Park where they're at the Family Guy studios and the manatees sort of just like put the balls in random orders, and that makes the non sequiturs for Family Guy. I mean, it's funny because South Park does that exact same thing. It's just not in a non sequitur format. They still just sort of like make ridiculous random bullshit. It's funny because it's absurd, or at least supposed to be. Not necessarily always successful.
I'm glad this is where we're going with it.
Forrest Gump is the worst movie ever made.
Yeah, when are we gonna do our Forrest Gump episode?
If you pick that, I'm gonna kill you.
I can give you my address. You can mail me some anthrax.
I'm gonna do an old. I don't know.
You gonna pull a Krasinski on me?
No, I'm gonna do
a little Krasinski.
You're gonna be. I don't have a good joke. Yes, I'm gonna.
Ted Krasinski was the serial murderer all along.
What about Ted Krusinski? Right? Instead of he's the Zodiac killer, he's.
Have a little Krasinski.
We're also a pro Zodiac killer podcast, right?
Pro Zodiac killer, pro Krasinski killer, pro
Krasinski killer. Yeah, I don't know what
H
that
Bomber
is,
Guy
but...
killer, H Bomber Guy Discord killer. I mean.
No, I don't. H Bomber Guy is killer.
Actually, you know what? We are pro H Bomber Guy killer because he made that shitty video about how racist PewDiePie is.
Wait, when was this? You mean the one from like 5 years ago?
Yeah.
The video is like
I watched
fine.
it.
Please, I have to go.
I don't know. You can leave.
You already pooped.
You can leave. It's me and Ryan 1v1 where we're going to talk about every movie in a random unspecified order.
This is how he's leaving the podcast. Is pooping.
Have you seen
Okay, bye-bye. I'm gonna actually go.
Okay, goodbye, Mari.
Wait, I'm gonna leave the call and stop recording. Okay, bye-bye. I love you guys.
That's okay.
Just 10 messages.
Goodbye forever, Mari.
Bye forever. You're never gonna.
We'll see you in the next. We'll see you in the next.
No, never. No, there's no
damn.
Next
Yeah,
live.
Mari is actually committing seppuku live on stream
seppuku
right now.
Yeah. Seppuku.
He's got the sword out, and he's and now he's
there
dead. We're all guilty of assisted suicide.
All right,
everyone.
now
I haven't even
we can
killed
get to the real shit.
Joe Biden yet, and I'm guilty of assisted suicide. You ever see that movie? God. Where like Angelina Jolie, her eyes fucked up, and there's like a ghost. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
That's I'm pretty sure that's a real movie. All right, what about the one
What is that? Ghost Whisperer?
What about Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt are like an S&M thing? I think they're like a couple, and they're like mercenaries, and they're hired to kill each other. And they're like, oh no, but I love you. It's a terrible movie. Sucks ass. 0 out of 10. What about you ever see Field of Dreams? Because I never saw it. I haven't seen it.
I have not.
We should watch The Lawnmower Man. You want to watch Lawnmower Man sometime? We should watch that.
We should watch Lawnmower Man.
We should do that a double feature with Final Fantasy Spirits Within.
Yeah, that'll be we'll do double episodes.
Science fiction films ever made. You ever see,
why are we talking? Why was it?
Did you ever see that one with it's James Franco and Jonah Hill, and like James Franco is like a killer or something, and Jonah Hill's like a journalist, and he's like trying to help him get out of jail for.
Sounds like a Seth Rogen.
I feel like it's just shitty Primal Fear. Now that I'm thinking about it, now that I'm trying to remember it, Primal Fear is awesome. You ever see The Game with Michael Douglas? You've seen that, right? No, you haven't. You haven't seen The Game. That movie's fucking awesome.
I've seen a lot of great movies.
It's Michael Douglas, and he's a slimy businessman. You never would have guessed it. He's a slimy, rich businessman. It's a totally unprecedented role.
There's a lot of good movies you need to watch too that I've seen.
No, I've seen all the good movies.
Highly doubted.
Like,
Knock on wood.
fuck, I never finished Poltergeist 2. I started it, but I didn't, because it sucked.
Yeah, it doesn't every Poltergeist except the first one suck?
And the first one also kind of sucks. It has cool moments, but it's not very good. And that's
So it was just
all the
bad
movies
all
I've
around.
seen, actually. We've reached the
Every
end
movie. The end of the
We've
list.
reached the end. This
we
was
could
funnier
do
before we were actually doing it, and now it's not. And now it sucks.
We could do our bit about Inland Empire.
How it's amazing?
How neither of us know what the fuck's going on in it, yeah.
I mean, I don't really know what's going on. I mean, I know it's about domestic abuse to some extent. There's abortion imagery, but I think that's more of a sort of thematic symptom rather than a thematic focus, if that makes sense.
You know what we should actually watch is, What Did Jack Do?
Yeah, I
Heard about
guess. I watched it, kind of. I watched it like
I haven't
accidentally.
watched it yet. It's only like 20 minutes, right?
That doesn't mean it isn't difficult.
I mean, everything with David Cage has to be fucking difficult.
David Cage. You caught it clean on tape, folks. That's what I was waiting for, and now I'm going to stop recording because I was trying to incriminate Ryan. And now that's...
Holy fuck.
now
That's the end of the David Cage-a-thon, folks. That's the end of the podcast forever, but not really. I wish it was. God. God! Fuck! I love this podcast so much. I'm like Jack Torrance at the end in the middle of The Shining, where he's at the bar and he's talking to the fucking fake bartender, and he's like, "I love the little fucker. I fucking love him."